We are live. This is the market update. I am your host, Bill Noble. Which breaks first? The Chinese economy, our housing market, the stock market, the bond market, or crypto? When is everybody going to realize, like, when you go through, like, the facts of the day, every day, all roads point back towards Bitcoin as money and ETH as DeFi and AI and crypto as a way to trade AI, because I don't even know how you trade AI anymore. Supposedly there's a country music song out there that artificial intelligence wrote, a country music song that's better than anything that like famous singers could write. We have a little tweet on that. So what breaks first? China, right? China. They're gonna regret the day that they sent all their Bitcoin over here. They are. And then I also think Treasury QE is coming, right? The Treasury has said if the Fed doesn't cooperate, we're going to go in and start buying back Treasuries. I have that. I think that's the most bullish thing for Bitcoin out there. And then I think there's another thing which is odd. I think it's bullish crypto in a way, but the Fed with this tightening cycle has screwed up so bad, right? That housing is going to crash. Like if you listen to Legacy and Ray Dalio, it's like, this is going to crash and that's going to crash and everything's going to fall apart. No, bro, it's housing, right? It's housing. There's no buyer. Nobody can afford it. And prices are still stratospherically high, as if, there was no correction in anything, because they can't correct because there's no buyer. So prices are still where they were. So I guess if you can pay cash, you can afford it. But people are turning the keys into the bank. The Fed has screwed up. And you know what? This is par for the course. Because what you don't know is every tightening cycle that the Fed has ever done has gone way too far. Way too far. Now, in this case, maybe they needed to tighten to stop inflation, but did they? Did the tightening cycle stop inflation? I don't think so. And housing is going to blow up. Now, how does this impact Bitcoin? When you look at the ability to trade the future, that's Bitcoin, right? Software that can't be copied by a chatbot. When you start thinking about like what's going on with rates and how they're going to have to like print and cut, right? Because, again, the Fed having to admit they screwed up, it is probably going to create some sort of outsized reaction by them and the Treasury because they have screwed up. And I don't know how much the fiscal end of the government can really afford to hand out money and do tax cuts without raising taxes on somebody else. We'll go over that. So at the end of the day, right, the crypto roadmap is pretty simple. Bitcoin first. Then if this mantra thing doesn't get anybody back on ETH, I don't know what will. I'm not touching a real world asset layer one. You got to be kidding me. I'm not doing it. Run RWA on Ondo or ETH. Period. And then how do we trade AI? And I know this is going to sound unbelievable, but at this point, I'm almost praying memes come back. Because at least something was happening with memes. And maybe when something gets boring over the summer, maybe you have memes come back. Or you have AI come back, or both. I just cannot believe there's no way to trade AI. So am I negative crypto? No. Right? Personally, I think the two big themes you need to keep an eye on are the Chinese economy is going to absolutely break and our housing market is going to crack, bringing in the Fed and the Treasury with both hands. Everyone's looking at stocks and everyone's looking at treasuries and who's selling and rates are going higher, whatever. The thing that everyone's looking at is never the right thing, right? I think you look at Bitcoin, housing, and China. We'll go over the details. All right. Zepedas is here. Mace, welcome, right? What are we tariffing and not tariffing today? Dude, it's a good question. I think this is going to go from tariff to whose economy breaks from the tariff threat. We'll see. Miguel, Warmon, oh no, Jacob, Vanessa, welcome. Yav, a super loyal guy. Lee, Taz Pinball, one of the originals. Tango, Mitchell, Crypto Scam, Breezy, and of course, the first guy to ever watch this show on this channel, SGSG. Okay. News and fun information. So tariffs are crashing the dollar as foreigners dump U.S. assets and unwind U.S. dollar reserve. Okay, so this guy was great last year. I still like him, but he's a little bit behind the curve, right? He's a little bit behind the curve. I don't know that Uncle Sugar wants mass dumping of treasuries, but it will take a lower dollar. And I think some form of QE is coming. I mean, whether Bessent does it or whether Powell does it, someone's doing it. Someone's doing it. Matter of fact, if now that I think of it, the best excuse to do QE is a complete implosion in the Chinese economy, that it just implodes because it's halfway there, more than halfway there before this whole thing started. Okay, driving the message home, President Trump says all necessary permits will be expedited to get NVIDIA building something. Build something, get on the right side of the orange man. Listen, this is a very powerful message. If you want to talk about what he really wants on purpose, he wants expedited building in the United States to where things come online before the midterm election, right? If it takes him 2 years to build stuff, NVIDIA hires 1,000 people, boom, right? That's what he wants, right? And that's why we're going through all this. It isn't really about fair trade. I mean, that's just, I don't know. That's noise. He can negotiate a different trade deal with somebody else. What? That's going to solve the problem that we're spending $1 trillion every 5 months? Okay, so now we're spending $800 billion every 5 months thanks to Elon. You know what I'm saying? Bitcoin fixes this. Okay, Trump administration says U.S. may buy Bitcoin using tariff revenue. Up yours. You sold us this for 3 months and we got literally wrecked at the dawn of a new day. Now, that would be nice. And that would also be nice if they could announce that at the Bitcoin conference, but I don't know, man. Okay, a guy who deserves a break after the Ohm debacle. Apple TV and Prime will be running something about Vitalik. A lot of people forget what this guy was able to do as a kid, right? I mean, nobody needed anything except Bitcoin. This guy came out, built this thing for smart contracts. First, he was a god. Then he was a goat, right? Because ETH couldn't participate in the meme trade. And, of course, there was no bullish catalyst for ETH whatsoever because ETH went all the way back down to where it was in 2017 when Vitalik was, I don't know, still had pimples. Now, I don't know what layer one you're running anything on related to finance. You're not running it on some new BS. That's for sure. Right? You had a $6 billion vaporizing job and you still don't know what the hell that was about. You don't know what it was about. People are like, oh, okay. It's another rug. Moving on. Okay. Well, I don't know. Who unloads enough tokens to destroy a $6 billion project? Don't tell me it's a rug. That's not true. We don't know what it's about. What I do know is if you're an institution, you're running things on ETH. Or Solana, right? Definitely ETH. You're running stuff on a battle-tested network. We'll pay the gas fee to prevent 90% downside, especially since ETH has already been wrecked. I mean, the case to get involved in ETH now, I think, is compelling. Okay, so Bessent not seeing dumping of U.S. treasuries. Bessent, what this really translate. Bessent seeing dumping of U.S. treasuries. Bassett, no evidence of sovereign sales of U.S. treasuries. Right. So you have to come out and deny it. Okay. Because the official data comes weeks later. Right. So we'll find out who's doing what eventually. Obviously, the Swiss franc doesn't go up 4%. Dollar Swiss doesn't go down 4% because no one did anything in Europe. Somebody did something, right? Okay, so look at this. First thing I said when they did the tariffs, when the Orange Man busted out Barron's 9th grade NYU economics project, holding up the cardboard sign, the first thing I said is that they're broke. They're broke. This is a stunt to get money coming in. And Besant is talking about raising taxes on all the Silicon Valley characters that, donated millions of dollars to his inauguration party fund. Okay. Republicans are considering all options to pay for president's tax cut promises. Okay. Interesting, right? In other words, in order to get no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and get everybody below 150 tax free, which they're going to need to do, or they're going to have a housing or a bankruptcy problem. It's happening right now. Interesting, right? It's like, oh, everything's fine. Yeah, but we can't cut taxes. Everything's fine, but Doge said it was $1 trillion. Oh, it's 150 billion. Oh, I'm sorry about that. At some point, I hope people look at this whole system and go, this is just complete BS. I'm buying Bitcoin. I think that's why Bitcoin actually holds and has a bid. Stocks feel like a dead cat bounce. I'm hoping Bitcoin's just doing this slow, painful turn where you're not interested because your bags are down, but in reality, the case gets better every day. Now, this is really interesting. Only 16,000 followers on these guys. The U.S. Treasury is floating the idea of buying back older debt. This is essentially a form of yield curve intervention to inject liquidity, support market function, or steer, certain risks away from the private sector. This is not QE in a traditional sense, as the Fed isn't involved yet. But it could mimic QE's impact if executed at scale via Treasury General Account. Okay, and here's the whole song and dance as to how they do it. Treasury QE is real. Yeah, Janet did it all the time. You need to borrow $3 trillion, you borrow $4 trillion, and then you use the extra trillion to start buying back debt and injecting that money into the system. They take the treasuries and they put the money in the system. That's what QE is. QE is coming back. Besant is telling the Fed, look, dude, this is happening. You can sit there and play with your dot plots. We're going to start doing QE now. And we may need to start doing QE because China is going to blow up. And if China blows up, that affects everybody. And I think a lot of what's out there now is kind of like, it feels like anti-China propaganda, right? Like TikTok is toast. Everyone is out after these guys. And basically what we're trying to do is get them to just break. We don't want a trade deal with them. We don't want a trade deal. We could do a trade deal. We can't get a trade deal with them because they can't do a trade deal. They have some pathetic thing about not accepting Boeing jets from us. Wow, is that all you got? They got rare earth metals. That's kind of a pain. But it feels like they're just going to implode. Our housing market and China are the risks. Not the stock market and the bond market like everyone, like Ray Dalio and all these goofballs are telling you. I don't think that's the problem. Like tech stocks, tech stocks are not affected by tariffs. Tech stocks have been marked down 30%. Now, the problem with tech stocks is that if they raise taxes on rich people, they're going to have to sell stocks. That's that risk. But again, let's focus. What's good for crypto? China imploding, QE, and housing, which brings in, I think, panic rate cuts. We'll go over the details. Okay, the most important dynamic to monitor, okay, according to Goldman, okay, China continues to sell U.S. paper. Okay. So China is going to sell treasuries, mainly because they need to raise money. Okay. There are a large group of earnings coming out this week. I don't think anyone cares. I don't think any earnings report about the past matters. This is not about tariffs. Ray Dalio fears something worse than a recession. Besant, okay, did that. Okay, Powell's term ends in 13 months. Okay. Yeah, the Trump administration knows economic weakness is coming. Okay. This sets up perfect for 2026 to be the year of massive cuts and stimulus. Play the market you have, not the market you want. Okay. So, like I said, Powell can do this now or later. He can do it now, or somebody comes in 2026 and does it big. I don't think they can wait until 2026. I don't think they can wait. I think they'll dismantle the Fed as an institution if he doesn't do something soon, particularly when it comes to housing. Okay, so hedge funds selling European stocks at the fastest rate in 2 years. Okay, now the Chinese cut currency fixing. Okay, there's a one currency in China that floats around at the market. There's another one that they control. They're losing control. They're losing control of their currency market. Okay. China limits stock sales to maintain the impression of stability. Meanwhile, in China, it's all about optics of not appearing to lose the trade war. China's state firms vow to boost share prices to stabilize plunging market. Good luck with that. That hasn't worked in years. The only thing that works over there is just massive QE, right? State Chinese sovereign funds buying stocks does nothing over there. They have to just print and buy it all of it, right? The stimulus that can come in through Hong Kong. Because, they'll go back and forth. And at the end of the day, everybody will slow down as one party tries to break the other. They're going to have to print. We're going to have to print. It seems obvious, right? Okay, so I had a really great tweet. China is dying out. The population is on track to drop as much as 75%. America will outnumber it by the end of the century, and the process is now virtually unstoppable. They're going to have social disorder over there, and that whole thing is going to implode. The youth unemployment rate over there is already high. The more we lean on them, the more they have two choices. They can start shooting at Taiwan, or they can print. And I think it's the same thing for the Fed. The phone's going to ring at the Fed, and it's going to be the PBOC going, yo, man, this is a mess, right? This is an absolute mess, okay? Right, and this guy, Rod Martin, who is getting a lot of traction, okay? It's about bringing these guys down on their knees, okay? This China will dominate narrative is a total myth. This idea that China is going to have the next reserve currency is a myth. It's not a myth that they're like a competitor, a threat. They've been at war with us. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is they could break. Their system was broken before all this BS started. Literally. So, yeah, they can break. Chinese press reports that certain banks have cut deposit rates down below 2%. So the banks are effectively doing rate cuts in China. They're doing rate cuts. Okay, here we are. No more jets. Okay, bro, whatever. China media calls for rate cuts, growing liquidity pressures. They're going to have to cut rates to zero. And they're going to have to flood the system with money. So I'm really looking forward to what happens in Hong Kong when these guys hit the panic button. Right? It's not a joke. It isn't. Peter Thiel, who's like a big billionaire who funded, the orange man getting out of trouble before the election. Everybody wants a drastic reset with China. Okay. Okay, dude. You're going to get a reset with China, all right. Their economy is going to blow up. Okay. And again, when you start hearing Peter Thiel and Laura Loomer, it starts to become propaganda. They're justifying what they're doing in front of the American public in case there's pain. Okay. So now the Chinese are flooding our system with, illegal products, illegal aliens. This lady is on the Chinese for like vaping products being dumped on the market. It's like, okay, wow. Is this what it comes down to? It's propaganda. And in my opinion, Bitcoin fixes this. This is also pretty pathetic on the part of the Chinese. The Chinese groveling to Vietnam, okay, to not do a trade deal with us. Vietnam's a huge source of cheap labor. Huge. It's a competitor for the Chinese. If they make a deal, what happens to them? How do you know China opens for trading? Simple. Just watch the daily spike in gold. Yeah, they pretty much got to buy gold every day or their currency is going to implode. A lot of people, gold is a dollar devaluation. And there is a problem with, who owns what gold, which is, you have a supply shock in gold, which is followed by a supply shock in Bitcoin. But don't let anybody tell you that what's going on in gold is just about devaluing the dollar. It is, but they are panicking. They're panicking. Right. And again, when the panic really starts, that's what brings in the Fed and Bessent. Like Bessent's like, look, man, if you don't want to do it, we'll do it. Personally, I think they're both going to have to do it. And Arthur Hayes is right. Right. They are putting the Remington oil on the printing press as we speak. Okay. So just as a reminder as to whether or not sovereigns have your interest at heart, do you realize that in theory, a geopolitical conflict is possible in the Middle East still? Right. We're talking to the Iranians directly. Hopefully, Ron Paul is noting that, normally conflict is directed by Congress, not the executive branch or whatever envoy is currently talking overseas. Now, what does this have to do with crypto today? Nothing. But if these guys do enough stupid stuff, they will break things. They will break things. Now, hopefully it's not Dalio who goes, well, they're going to break everything. I think they're going to break the dollar. They're going to break not just the dollar, but they're going to break fiat. Okay. Orange Man says no longer getting radical about what we expect in the Middle East. Thank God. Hopefully it stays that way. Best indicator of the economy, retail flows. We view individual investors' equity buying decisions as more influenced by their employment status than equity market. Okay? So Goldman's like, yeah, the general public is going to buy the dip. They've been buying the dip for 15 years. Why would they stop now? Unless they have a problem with their job. And that is the big wild card in the economy. Now, this, oh my God. More than 35,000 properties foreclosed in March. You lose your job. You drive down to the bank, or you have 2 or 3 jobs, like most people. You take the keys, you turn them into the bank. You can't sell the house. You could sell it, but you just turn it into the bank and just say, you know what? Have a nice day. Okay. And there's no bid. The banks are going to market sell the houses and housing is going to crash. Housing is going to crash, like brutally. Now, what does this mean for the banks? I don't know. But we're talking about everything else but this. And I continue to believe this is the crash. There is no bid. Like the Treasury can buy Treasury bonds, right? They can do QE to buy securities. They can do QE to buy equities. They can do all kinds of stuff, right? They can't stop this, right? They can't stop this Because if you start to have layoffs because of uncertainty, even a modest amount of layoffs, everyone's turning in the keys. Everyone's turning in the keys in Virginia. I think that's why they had to stop. That's why Elon disappeared. If Elon kept going, and I said this, you'd have that whole section of the country sink under the ocean. When I looked at this, I was like, rates are going to zero. They're going to zero. You can't, I mean, is the Fed and the Treasury really going to sit around and watch housing absolutely do a 75% correction? You're going to have a 75% correction in housing, which is why they haven't prevented BlackRock from buying single family homes. I think that's the only reason why it wouldn't be 75% down. It'll be 40% down because there's no bid. There's no bid. Okay. China will only engage in trade talks with the U.S. if its leaders show respect for Beijing. Dude, you're communists and your economy's falling apart. They don't want to talk. They're using excuses because they can't talk because they're in big trouble. They're in big trouble. Okay? Big trouble. Okay, Canada launching Solana ETFs. Hysterical that it's being done in Canada. Like literally hysterical. Grop confirms that if XRP Ledger captures 10% of Hidden Road's volume, XRP will be at $28. Okay. Well, let's put it this way. When Ohm blew up, that means XRP and Ethereum. XRP and Ethereum. Like, nobody is going to do business on some crappy layer one. Now, I don't know if XRP Ledger is battle tested the way Ethereum and Solana are, but I'm just telling you right now, nobody is running anything on some startup real world asset project after what just happened. They'll run it on Ondo or they're going to run it on Ethereum, right? Or they got to run it somewhere. Okay, somebody disagrees with Vitalik that Pump was bad. You know, our bags are doing better when Pump was around. I wasn't in favor of Pump because of the number of people that were getting hurt, but the market goes completely in the opposite direction. First, we have insanity, and then we have nothing. You know, just like we got to find a gray area in this market. Corporations bought 95,000 Bitcoin in Q1. Supply shock imminent. Right? All you need is one big event in this market and Bitcoin just goes whoop. Now, of course, in the meantime, we should sit here and wait and you start talking yourself out of it, which I refuse to do. Someone asked me to make a country song and it did not disappoint. I'm speechless. Imagine singing all your life for an AI model to make a better song than you did in mere seconds. Okay. So there's a lot of disaster stuff about AI, and AI does create a more competitive landscape. There's got to be a way to trade this in crypto. There has to be. And if there isn't, then hopefully the market makes one. Because right now I have no way to trade AI. I don't think AI is profitable with big companies. I don't know if anybody wants to buy the dip in the Mag 8, right? And I think the best way to trade AI in the future right now is Bitcoin, followed by ETH, followed by whatever we can get going, even if it's Fartcoin. Okay. So Michael Saylor noting that, hey, let's use some money to buy Bitcoin. El Salvador continues to buy, right? Critics slam deregulation of crypto as Trump family expands its footprint, says these communists over in England. Still can't believe what's gone on over there. I don't know if they're implementing this like 1984 system because of changes in their population. I don't know what they're doing over there. I don't. All I know is if you don't have Bitcoin and you don't have privacy and you don't have sovereignty, I don't care if it sounds like the same thing every day. Sovereigns are going to blow themselves up. And what are you going to do? What are we going to do? Bitcoin has significantly outperformed the S&P for 14 years. Waiting for the general public to figure this out. Okay. Okay, so Bitcoin, we all sit here watching paint dry, watching Bitcoin hit this trend line, retest it, and now we're like, I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. You know what I'm saying? Like the chart's good, but they're grinding you down. You see the headlines? They're grinding you down with these tariff headlines. Folks, China's going to implode. The housing market's going to implode. Bessent has got to do QE, and the Fed follows. And I think one of the reasons why Bessent has to do it is because if the Fed comes in and does it, it's going to look like panic. I think the Fed in a normal world would be doing it. They're not, because it would look like panic. So I think the Treasury's going to do it. Huge, by the way. Huge. Huge. Okay. So lots of people short Solana. I hope they get smoked. You know, Solana, again, a battle-tested layer one. I mean, I know there is a lot of centralized holdings. The coin is 25% away from its 200-day moving average. And there's a Lux Algo buy signal here. And money flow is positive. I didn't see that until just now. I would say that is the winner of the best looking Lux Algo crypto. Money flow is positive. You know, you got a little Fibonacci circle resistance at 133. I don't understand why everyone is negative. I just don't. Right? ETH is unbelievable. Okay, I don't have a turn in money flow yet, but I do have ETH sitting on discount zone, and ETH is, just for laughs, 138% away from its premium zone at 4K. No one is running anything anywhere. They're running it on Solana. They're running it on ETH. And if they get a tax incentive, they'll run it on XRP Ledger. Period. Period. And if you don't think we need security tokens, and you don't think we need tokenized assets, people, we need tokenized assets. Okay? We need them. Because, you know, if you wake up one day and this rears its ugly head, does anybody remember terms like mortgage-backed securities? You know, they still take housing loans and they put them all together and sell them like bonds. Yeah, that still exists, folks. You cannot have this blow up with no implications, or you cannot have this blow up with no Fed response. So, you know, the banks have to come in and say, okay, we got to start tokenizing assets now, yesterday. Or people like BlackRock go, you know what? We got to start using the DeFi system. We have to start using it for whatever reason. Can't believe that's just not the case. I mean, yet. Right. Yet. Okay. Let's take a look at total market cap numbers. You know, total altcoin market cap still below the 200-day moving average. Total crypto market cap, okay, excluding Bitcoin. So ETH and everyone else. 16% away from the 200-day moving average. So this is total altcoin market cap worth roughly $964 billion. Okay? We're doing $1.5 trillion swings in S&P, but the entire crypto market, without Bitcoin, the whole rest of the decentralized universe is only worth $900 billion. That's the market update. Like Chinese economy, housing on a fast track to zero. Meanwhile, no one wants to touch this. And I continue to believe that if someone changes their mind over Easter, you can have a big move. Now, I guess you can also have a down move. I guess something can always go wrong. I just gave you a half an hour of what could go wrong. But what happens if everybody goes, you know what? We're going to do this trade instead. Because you know what? The perfect time to put liquidity into the market for the U.S. would be when it's just Asia over Easter. Asia's on their own over Easter, right? Europe's out. We're out. It's Asia just to trade. If they don't get QE in the system before that or while that's happening, I don't know, man. I don't know. Okay. Bonds. Okay, let's go to interest rates because I know whatever's going on ain't good over there. It's not. Okay, I think there's a lot of people keeping an eye on like long-term bond yields. This is the 30-year bond yield. A lot of people are freaking out. The 30-year bond in England made new high. I guess at the end of the day, I don't want to do too much macro. The worst, bad, I think bad is good. I think bad is good for crypto as long as equities are not going to zero. Okay. ETH is trying to break out. There's this formation on the 90-minute chart, trying to get something going. Okay. People have to be willing to pay higher prices on the 90-minute chart of Bitcoin. It's all about what happens at 86. Range traders will undoubtedly get short up here, right? That's what they do. I mean, they got long down here, they get short up there, and they just play these box ranges. Not going to lie. Right. The reason the crypto can't get going is because the charts, I mean, this Bitcoin chart looks okay, right? It looks like they want to attack 89, but they got to get through that. Now, if they get through 89, you're going to have some excitement. If it doesn't, then you're just going to have short sellers playing the 88, 78 range. That's it. Okay. Chinese economy blows up. Housing blows up. Treasury does QE. Fed has to start panic cutting. It's a question of time. My strategy is to stay long Bitcoin as long as I can and add to ETH on any dip. Then if that works out, spread out into alts. Because again, you could have alts do well in May or July if things get boring. And believe it or not, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm cheering for the meme guys to get it going over the summer, especially if you get Bitcoin back to 100. And I don't see how Bitcoin doesn't go back to 100 given this macro backdrop, right? If stocks are done going down, there's nothing to stop Bitcoin from going up because printed money is coming. And I'll leave it there. We will see you tomorrow.